G'day folks, let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons. So, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a pretty big fan of D&D. Thankfully, I've managed to sneak in a few sessions even through lockdown just over Discord with my mates to really scratch that role-playing itch. Now, I may not be the most experienced or knowledgeable player at the table, but I've tried a fair few races and classes over the years, and more importantly, I've tried a fair few spells. Spellcasters are super fun. Getting to customize your list of spells gives you a strong sense of character, and some of the spells at your disposal can make you feel really powerful. Others, not so much. There are some truly iconic spells in Dungeons & Dragons that everyone knows and loves. Eldritch Blast, Fireball, and Arcane Missiles might come to mind when you're thinking of powerful spells, or maybe more utility-based ones like Fairy Fire, Healing Word, or Invisibility. But they can't all be good. Some of them are bad. Memishly, unusably bad. If you play regularly, you might already be thinking of some contenders. Skyright is certainly up there. It's a second level spell that allows you to write a 10-word message in the sky with clouds. Might be cute if your character is proposing, or maybe vaguely useful for some mass propaganda, but I don't really think it's a go-to for wizards. Anyway, it's a ritual spell, and I guess it works for its intended purposes, so bad, but not terrible. I've seen a lot of people mention True Strike. It's a cantrip that bards, warlocks, wizards, and sorcerers can pick up. Basically, you spend an action so that next turn your first attack roll against an enemy has advantage. That might seem pretty average already, but when you look into it further, it's quite bad. It's concentration, so you can't be concentrating on another spell. Also, if you have the ability through class features or something to cast a cantrip and make an attack in the same turn, True Strike only gives you advantage next turn. It also doesn't scale, so if you're making more than one attack per attack action, you're giving up several attacks just for advantage on one of them next turn. It's bad, but it is only a cantrip and it can technically remove disadvantage, so it's not the worst. Witch Bolt is another one you hear about being underpowered, and that's completely fair. First level and concentration, but with only a 1d12 damage reward. The whole gimmick is that you can spend an action on subsequent turns to keep doing that 1d12 damage, but you can't really do anything else. It ends if you use your action for any other purpose, or if your enemy happens to wander more than 30 feet away from you. Situational and outclassed by plenty of other damage spells, it's bad, but at least it can be upcast for more damage, or used if you're low on spell slots for some last-ditch sustained damage. I think the worst spell in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition has to be Find Traps. Allow me to explain why. It's a second level spell, and around this level is when you start to see some really cool and interesting effects like Detect Thoughts, or Silence, or Invisibility. You have to reach level 5 to cast second level spells, and you don't get that many spell slots to cast them, so you want them to be really good. Find Traps isn't even good at finding traps. It costs an action, has a 120 foot range, and allows you to sense the presence of any traps within your line of sight. You don't know where they are, so the name is a little bit misleading. You just know that they're there, and you get a general sense of the awful, horrifying death that lies in store for you. Obviously, it really sucks that Find Traps doesn't even properly let you find traps, but there's a whole other ridiculous consideration here as well. This is a cleric, druid, or ranger spell. All of those classes use wisdom as their spellcasting ability. They all want to have high wisdom. You know what else uses wisdom? Perception. Even without proficiency, all of those classes should do pretty well with perception checks. So why on earth would you ever waste a second level spell slot casting Find Traps when you can just chuck a perception check and it'll probably be more accurate anyway? The spell needs line of sight in the first place. The only reason I can see this ever making sense is if you have to detect the presence of a magical trap and you have low intelligence. Obviously, some of this is up to DM discretion. Maybe your DM doesn't even let you search for traps unless you use this spell. But regardless, it's pretty woeful for a second level spell. Anyway, feel free to let me know if you have any surprising and efficient uses for Find Traps or other contenders for the worst spell in 5th edition. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and have a good one.